I was 29 and covered in grease, an everyday sight in my one-man auto repair shop just off Route 17. The place was more a shack than a business, with a faded blue awning and a sign that read, Tucker's Garage, letters chipped. From years of weather and wear. I wasn't proud of what I had, but I was proud of what I did. Every dented fender and rattling engine was a small step in rebuilding the life I had nearly thrown away. It wasn't always like this. At 19, I'd blown my college scholarship on poker and parties, thinking I was invincible. By 22, I was sleeping in my truck and begging for part-time work at every garage in 3 counties. But there was one lesson rock bottom. Teaches you better than any classroom. It's how to fight for your second chance. That Thursday afternoon, the clouds broke open with a vengeance. Rain pounded the tin roof like 1,000 drumsticks, and I was elbow deep in a busted carburetor when I heard a frantic knock on the office window. I wiped my hands on a rag, peered through the streaked glass, and saw her, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wide with panic. I have a flat, she stammered through the crack of the door, her voice trembling more than the storm. Pull up, I nodded, grabbing my jacket and following her outside. Her car was sleek, too sleek for this part of town. A matte black Mercedes G-Wagon, foreign plates, spotless interior. It didn't match the girl, though. She wore a modest navy dress, clutched her purse like it held her whole world, and flinched at every bolt of thunder. I got down, inspected the tire, and confirmed what she already knew. You're lucky it happened near town, I said, kneeling to unfasten the spare. Most folks don't stop in Masonville. They drive right through. She smiled faintly but didn't speak. Just watched me work. Quiet, intense. You passing through? I asked, trying to break the silence. She hesitated. Kind of. Looking for someone. I didn't push. Everyone's got their story, and I wasn't one to pry. The rain started easing off by the time I tightened the last lug nut. I stood, drenched and muddy, and handed her a towel from my toolbox. She looked at it like it was a diamond. Thank you, she whispered, and I caught it, that flicker of emotion in her voice. Gratitude laced with something else. Fear, maybe. Or sorrow. No charge, I said, brushing it off. But you're soaked. Come inside at least until the worst passes. She nodded, hesitantly stepping into the garage. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I offered her some instant coffee, and she wrapped her fingers around the cup like it was the first warmth she'd felt in years. Then out of nowhere, she asked, Do you believe people can disappear? I blinked. Disappear like leave. Everything behind? She nodded. Yeah, I said. I did once. She looked at me, startled. You? I leaned back on the stool. I used to have a different life, made some stupid choices, lost everything. Took years to even get back, on my feet. There was a pause. I'm running too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But not from mistakes, from people who want to own me. The room felt suddenly heavier. I didn't ask questions. I just listened. She told me her name was Evelyn, said she'd grown up in a world of privilege, private jets, gala dinners, luxury estates in 3 countries. But what she hadn't had was freedom. Every move she made was orchestrated, her education, her job, even the man her father wanted her to marry. So I left, she said. No warning, just packed a bag and drove. I was stunned. She didn't look like someone who'd walked away from millions. She looked like someone trying to remember how to breathe. You don't have to explain, I said gently. But whatever you're looking for, I hope you find it. She stared at the floor. I didn't even know where I was going. Then the tire blew, and I thought, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm stuck again. I smiled. Or maybe it was fate bringing you to the one garage in town that won't charge a dime. That made her laugh, and for the first time, I saw it. Genuine joy flickering in her expression. She stayed another hour, sipping coffee and asking me questions about the shop, about the old engine on the table, about the rusty photograph of me and my younger brother on the wall. When she left, she shook my hand with both of hers. "You saved me," she said. "Not just the tire. All of it." I watched her drive away, taillights fading into the misty dusk, thinking I'd never see her again. But 2 weeks later, a sleek silver sedan pulled into the lot. A man in a tailored suit stepped out and said 5 words that turned my world upside down. "Mr. Tucker, Miss Evelyn sent us." He looked like someone who never had to worry about bills. Trim beard, slicked back hair, and shoes that probably cost more than my entire toolbox. The kind of man who walked with purpose, as if the world bent to his schedule. "Mr. Tucker?" he asked again, polite but firm. "That's me," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "You're from—" He extended a card, thick, embossed, and painfully elegant. "Alden and Hart Consulting, Private Holdings." His name was Jonathan Ashcroft. "Miss Evelyn requested we speak with you immediately," he said. "May we step inside?" I was suspicious. The last time a man in a suit asked to talk in private, it ended with me signing away my old man's truck to cover a gambling debt. But something in his tone, controlled, respectful, made me pause. Inside, he glanced around the small office, eyes scanning every inch like he was evaluating more than just the space. "I'll be brief," he said. "Miss Evelyn is exceptionally grateful for the assistance you rendered. She speaks highly of your character, and she's made an unusual request." I leaned on the counter. "Go on." "She wants to hire you," he said. "Not for mechanical work, for a project she's beginning. One that requires trust, discretion, and grounded people." I blinked. "Hire me to do what exactly?" He smiled faintly. "To fix something far more complicated than engines." That line should have made me laugh, but it didn't. "Look, I appreciate the visit," I said carefully, "but I'm just a guy who tightens bolts and replaces brake pads." "If this is charity—" "It's not," he interrupted. "In fact, she insisted that if you declined the offer, we'd leave immediately and never contact you again." There was a manila envelope. Inside, an invitation. One-way flight, first class. New York City. A hotel reservation, and a non-disclosure agreement that made my head spin. "I know this feels surreal," Jonathan said as I flipped through the papers. "But Miss Evelyn doesn't think like other people. She sees things in people. It's her rarest gift." I looked around my shop, the oil-stained floor, the half-eaten sandwich on my bench, the broken neon sign that hadn't worked in years. Then I looked at the ticket. 1 week later, I was stepping into a marble lobby in Manhattan wondering if I'd gone insane. The penthouse suite was absurd. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Art I didn't recognize but knew was expensive. The kind of place that whispered wealth, not shouted it. She stood by the window, silhouetted against the skyline. "Hey, stranger," she said, turning. Same calm smile, same soft eyes. Only now, she looked different, confident, radiant, powerful. "You came," she said. I chuckled nervously, still not sure why. She walked over, offering me a glass of water like we were old friends. "Because I need someone I can trust," she said. "Someone real. I'm building something, Tucker, something massive, and I don't want it to be built on lies." "What kind of something?" "A venture fund," she said, her voice sharpening with purpose. "To back underdogs, people with ideas who've been rejected by the system, women, minorities, ex-cons, mechanics with million-dollar minds who never had a chance." My brow furrowed. "And what do you need me for?" "To vet them, not with spreadsheets, with your instincts." I laughed out loud. "You want me to tell you which businesses to fund?" "Not businesses," she corrected. "People." I shook, my head in disbelief. "I don't know the first thing about finance, or pitching, or investment, but you know people," she said firmly. "You read them in seconds, just like you read me that day. You saw I was scared. And you didn't. Push. You listened, you helped, and you asked nothing in return. I swallowed hard. Why me, Evelyn? She looked me in the eye. Because you know what it's like to be dismissed, to fight for a second chance. And because I trust you more than the billion-dollar consultants trying to impress me with jargon. There was silence. Then I asked the only question that mattered. What do you need me to do? The next few months were a whirlwind. I was flown to cities I'd only seen in movies. Evelyn and I sat through pitch after pitch, some in coffee shops, others in crumbling basements where dreamers scribbled ideas on napkins. She introduced me as her partner in truth. It wasn't a title, but it stuck. At first, I doubted every step. I was way out of my league. Every room felt too polished, every conversation too calculated. But then I started listening, not to the numbers, but to the tone, the eyes, the unspoken desperation behind each dream. And slowly, I began to speak up. One afternoon, we met a single mom from Detroit who designed a low-cost solar heater using salvaged parts. The suits at the table laughed off her prototype. I didn't. She's got fire, I said. She's building for people like her. Back her. Evelyn did. 6 months later, her startup was supplying affordable heat to hundreds of homes. Word started to spread. Evelyn Harper's new venture fund wasn't just throwing money at polished decks. It was betting on humanity. And I was at the center of it, somehow. But success doesn't come without backlash. Late one night, Evelyn and I sat on the rooftop of her new office building, overlooking the glittering skyline, each light a window into someone else's life. You ever regret it? I asked. Leaving everything? She was quiet. Then, every day, and never at all. I nodded. Your father, I said gently. Does he know where you are? She stared into the distance. He knows, but he pretends I'm dead. It's easier for him. The silence lingered. You're not afraid? I asked. That he'll come after you? That all of this, could collapse? She looked at me, and in her eyes was the resolve of someone who'd already stared down fear and kept walking. I'm not building this for him, she said. I'm building it for people who were never given a chance to dream. And if I fall, at least I'll fall forward. That night I realized something. I wasn't just helping Evelyn build a fund. I was rebuilding myself. The man who once gambled away his future was now helping strangers bet on theirs. And for the first time in a long time, I felt worthy of the second chance I had been given. The headlines called us the odd pair. Every time a new entrepreneur's dream was funded and took off, Evelyn and I ended up on another front page. Her polished brilliance, my oil-stained jeans. It made for good media. What they didn't see was the work, the sweat behind the scenes, the endless nights of reviewing pitches, the silent drives between cities, and the quiet, constant recalibration of our mission. We had backed nearly 30 ventures in under a year. None were obvious choices. All were overlooked geniuses, ex-felons with coding skills, refugees crafting biotech innovations in shared labs, high school dropouts building robotics in garages. Each one reminded me of the day Evelyn's tire blew. Out on that forgotten road. The world had passed them by. We didn't. For once, I was doing something that mattered. But momentum breeds scrutiny. And our movement wasn't making everyone happy. One Friday morning, Evelyn looked unusually tense. We were supposed to fly to Boston for a pitch review, but she called an emergency meeting instead. When I arrived, she was staring out the floor to ceiling. Windows of her corner office back rigid, jaw clenched. They found me, she said, voice flat. My chest tightened. Who? My father's board, she replied. They've traced the fund's financial trails. They know it's me, and they've filed an injunction. I sat down hard. On what grounds? They're claiming I siphoned family funds to start the venture, which is absurd. I used my portion of the trust, fully legal. But it's enough to drag us into court. I exhaled slowly. So what now? They want to freeze the accounts, she said. And if they do that, it's over. All the people we're backing, all those dreams, they vanish overnight. There was a beat of silence. Then I stood. You didn't run from your name. To let them bury it now. She looked at me, something fierce sparking in her eyes. You're right, she said. I didn't. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Lawyers, press briefings, leaked emails and planted stories. Suddenly, the world that had celebrated us was asking hard questions. Is Evelyn Harper really self-made? Who is the mysterious mechanic behind the millions? Fraud or fortune? What's the truth behind Harper's fund? Our investors started pulling back. Promising founders hesitated to sign. Everywhere we turned, there was doubt. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She doubled down. We hit the road again, visiting each funded startup in person, reminding them that their fight was ours too. One morning, we stood in the middle of a Detroit warehouse where solar panels were being assembled by formerly incarcerated workers. The founder, Clarice, hugged us both and said, I don't care what the papers say. You believed in me when no one else would. I'm not backing down. That moment, it lit a fire in us. Evelyn called a press conference. She stood in front of dozens of cameras, dressed not in designer labels but in jeans and a plain navy jacket, the same one she wore the day I met her. I didn't steal money, she declared. I reclaimed it. I used my portion of a legacy built on control to create one built on possibility. Then she did something that stunned even me. She handed the microphone to me. I want you to hear from the man who reminded me what it means to believe in someone, she said. I froze at first, but then I stepped forward. My name's Tucker. I used to fix engines and wonder if life had anything more for a guy like me. Then this woman broke down in front of my garage. I fixed her tire. She fixed my life. And together we've helped build dozens of new ones. So no, we're not frauds. We're fighters, and we're just getting started. The media firestorm changed that day. Not overnight, but enough. We weren't just a story anymore. We were a movement. But the real twist came a month later. Evelyn received a certified letter, hand-delivered. It bore the Harper family seal. We both stared at it like it might explode. Open. It, I said. Inside was a single-page note, typed, signed in pen. You've made your point, and I misjudged you. Return home. The board will step down. The fund remains yours. Your father. She read it 3 times. Then she burned it. You're not going back? I asked. She shook her head. He doesn't understand. I didn't do this to prove him wrong. I did it to prove everyone else right, the ones he never saw. I nodded. So what's next? She smiled. We scale. Bigger. Smarter. Worldwide. That night we signed the papers to establish Second, Spark International, a global investment initiative for underserved innovators. We had started in a garage. Now, we were building a global empire of underdogs. But even as we expanded, neither of us changed the core principle. Don't just invest in ideas. Invest in people. And I wasn't the same man anymore. I was flying private jets and speaking at conferences. Sure. But I still kept my old work boots. I still remembered the scent of oil and rust, the echo of hammers in that one-room garage. Because it wasn't success that changed me. It was purpose. And somehow, the girl with the flat tire had led me straight to it. 3 years. That's how long it's been since I stepped out of my garage to help a stranger change her tire. Today, I stood on the rooftop of our latest campus in Nairobi, sunlight stretching over the skyline, children's laughter floating from a nearby tech school funded by one of our grantees. The world had changed. Or maybe, we had changed it. When Evelyn found me again, I was alone on the edge of the rooftop, hands in my pockets, watching a group of young coders bring their solar-powered laptops to life. Still can't believe it. Can you? She asked, stepping beside me. I grinned. Not for a second. She had grown too. Her aura now had the quiet force of someone who'd stared down every kind of betrayal and still dared to believe in people. Her wealth didn't define her. Her courage did. So what now? I asked. She pulled out a folder. Inside, plans for a global accelerator program, remote education, grant training, micro-mentorship, all built to scale our philosophy to every forgotten corner of the planet. You never stop, I said. She smiled. And neither do you. But this story isn't about corporate campuses or million-dollar investments. It's about what came after. It's about the day I returned to my hometown for the first time since I left. My old garage was still standing, barely. The sign hung crooked, but the memories hadn't faded. I ran my hand along the dusty workbench where I once patched together dreams with duct tape and borrowed time. That's when I noticed a teenage boy standing just outside holding a busted bicycle. You open? He asked shyly. I laughed. I am now. I fixed his chain, showed him how the gear system worked, then gave him my old set of tools. Keep building, I told him. Not just bikes. Build your own story. He nodded, wide-eyed. That moment, that kid, he reminded me of who I used to be, and more importantly, why I couldn't forget it. A few months later, Evelyn surprised me again. She had quietly purchased the land behind my old garage. It's yours, she said, for whatever you want to build. So I built a place that felt impossible once. A maker's hub for teens, dreamers, inventors, and kids like me who were always told to keep their hands busy, but never their minds. We named it the Spark Shop. Every wall had a name, not of donors but of the first-timers, the ones who dared to pitch an idea, even if their hands trembled, and in the front lobby, under a single hanging bulb, sat an old, rusted wrench, framed in glass. Beneath it, a plaque read, "This tool once fixed a tire that changed 2 lives." Years passed. The world changed faster than we could keep up. AI, clean tech, waterless farming, energy-efficient housing. We invested in them all, but only when the people behind them shared our fire. Some of our founders made billions. Others changed laws. A few failed spectacularly, but got back up stronger. Every story mattered. We became known not as a fund, but as a force, a revolution of belief. Evelyn eventually appeared on Time's cover as the heir who gave it all away. They called me the mechanic who saw beyond metal. Neither of us cared much for titles. We cared about results. But one moment still plays over. In my mind, like a dream, we were invited to speak at a youth forum in Geneva. As we stood backstage, Evelyn took my hand, a rare gesture. "Thank you," she whispered, "for that day, for every day since." I squeezed her hand gently. "It was just a tire." "No," she said, voice thick with emotion. "It was hope. People often ask me now, did you ever think you'd become a billionaire?" The truth? Never cared about the money. What I cared about, what we built, was a legacy stitched with second chances. A belief that kindness isn't weakness, and that opportunity doesn't just belong to the lucky. It belongs to the overlooked, the underdog, the one no one expected to rise. It belongs to the girl on the side of the road, and to the man who stopped to help her, unaware he was about to start the most extraordinary chapter of his life.